Hello, and my name is David Doub, creator of Dusk. Dusk was a hybrid of various vampire mythos that I grew up on from video games and movies and books from Dracula and Lost Boys, but also it had a heavy influence from Vampire the Masquerade. When I was making Dusk, I was just writing the scripts and all, but I was working to support my wife and so forth, and me, of course, just supporting the household. And she unfortunately passed young because of a blood clot. And that really said to me that, the whole term you only live once. So I really decided to write the Dusk, or, get a comic out. And Dusk was the one I was working on. And I talked to a publisher in Britain, of all places, Swindon. But, they were out of Swindon, England, and they published the shorts. It was one story, one issue, and that came out, and I was so excited. I had another story done, and they stopped publishing altogether after that. Now, so then I moved on to Ambrosia, who was trying to do kind of like a hybrid online model. And then use Lightning Source to print stuff out. And then Ambrosia was struggling. Then they tried to do it through submitting stuff through Image, and then they fell apart. Finally, I just started publishing on my own, and I've been kind of doing that specifically with Dusk over the years. So now I'm with Dusk is reaching its 15th year, and we're gone back and redoing one story. And at heart of Dusk, it's meant to be not only just messy because of the gothic nature of it, but it's also too many heroes or heroes and all that. And I wanted some a character that wasn't despicable or evil. That's been overdone too, but I wanted them messy. And so with a lot of the Dusk stories, when you change the position or the angle or the viewpoint, you can see different sides for. In some books, she's the antagonist. Sometimes she's the protagonist. Sometimes she's just a bystander. And I just like that kind of different, viewpoint storytelling. The initial plot was it was by happenstance because, like I said, it came from live action role playing. And originally, I just had your very stereotypical bad guy coming in, he giving the other vampires a hard time and all that. But he had one minion, and a friend was NPCing that minion. One of my other friends was all like, "Oh, well, that's a valuable asset," and so took her and saved that NPC. And from there, it just kind of spun out where I had to come up with a backstory and flesh things out because the NPC and the character Ash and Eve, they were originally in real life. The people playing them were a couple, but they kind of had a tumultuous times. They're not together, and they had a tumultuous relationship and all. And I used that in the background for the stories. The backstory for the characters was Eve was was just a normal person, but she had an innate ability for magic, and she was just in a kind of broken marriage, and it wasn't going anywhere, and it was just miserable. So this evil vampire takes her out, trains her to use that magical ability for his sake. And she was already in a bad place. So she literally thought she was in hell, that, she finally had just, succumbed to all the abuses and finally was just going to hell. And this was a demon, tormenting her for eternity. When she's freed and all that, obviously, that's the first act of kindness Eve sees, and she tries to, respond to that. But it was the vampire that saves her is more pragmatic. He's like, no, I wanted to save you, and you could help me, but I wasn't going to force you to do it because, just because I'm a vampire doesn't mean I'm evil, where you're rude, rude and horrible to everybody, but you do things, you go against the grain to accomplish your goals. And so you had this kind of, requited love story that is typical a lot of romances and vampire stories, but it was never going to go anywhere. Or if it was always fated to be messy. And it's funny though, because with Dusk Redo, we've just we've taken an old story to where it was more Eve. Originally, the story Eve drove was catalyst to disrupt this other vampire servant and destroy his whole life just by her curiosity and her chance to want to mess things up. because everything's messed up for her. She kind of has a self-destructive streak. In this story, though, we show that she's just the catalyst to upset his mistakes and his bad choices, and Eve just kind of is the one to give him that little tap to cause a whole mess and to make him to self-destruct. He needed an excuse, and she provides that excuse. So it looks like she's the bad guy, but no, she was just the trigger waiting to set him off. And so that's what happens.